स्वागत है दोस्तों मेरा मेरे इस नए ब्लॉग में। आज का मेरा जो है वो सेकेंड डे है एबरदीन में, स्कॉटलैंड में। आज का हमारा प्लान हो रहा है कि हम एक कैसल, मोस्ट लाइकली बॉलमोरल कैसल, जो यहाँ से करीब 50 माइल्स दूर है, वहाँ जाएंगे। और उसके बगल में ही एक विस्की की डिस्टिलरी है, उसको भी विज़िट करेंगे। तो फ़िलहाल तो यही प्लान हो रहा है। बाकी फ्रेंड का वेट कर रहे हैं, वो आएगा तो उसके साथ ही जाएंगे। शुरू करने से पहले जो है एक बार आपको हम ब्रेकफास्ट का टूर दे देते हैं, जो यहाँ पे होटल के प्राइस के साथ इंक्लूडेड है। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं इस ब्लॉग को। ये है कुछ बाहर से होटल का दृश्य, हॉलिडे इन एक्सप्रेस। 4 मंजिले का ये होटल है, काफ़ी पुराना स्ट्रक्चर सा लग रहा है। और नीचे जो है ये जो दिख रहा है, नीचे आपको विंडोज़, यहाँ पे जो है इनका ब्रेकफास्ट का और रेस्टोरेंट का एरिया है। बार भी है इसमें, जो कि मिडनाइट तक जो है ओपन रहता है। ये है रिसेप्शन एरिया यहाँ का। ये कुछ मेन्यू है ब्रेकफास्ट का। स्टार्ट द डे राइट, और इसको पीछे करेंगे तो मेन्यू मिलेगा। फ्रेश स्टार्ट में जो है ऑल बटर क्रोसियन है, ब्रेड सिलेक्शंस हैं, जेम्स एक्सप्रेस, मफिन, कैलॉग सीरियल्स, ग्रेनोला, नेचुरल योगर्ट, टी कॉफ़ी है। और ये सब है जो कि यहाँ पे आपको दिखेंगे। यहाँ पे फ्रूट्स हैं, सीरियल्स हैं, योगर्ट्स हैं। यहाँ से प्लेट उठाइए, फिर जो है वो ब्रेड्स हैं। दैन आपका ये क्या है भाई, ये तो कुछ है, बेकन है, ये सॉसेज है। दैन वी हैव व्हाट इज दिस, स्क्रैम्बल एग्स। दैन वी हैव, ये क्या बोलते हैं इसको, बेकन बीन्स, ओके, बिग बीन्स। एंड देन टोमेटो। दैन वी हैव हैश ब्राउन। और ये जो है वो आपके दूध के साथ जो है सीरियल्स खाने के लिए हैं। बटर, दैन आपका ब्रेड, मफिन्स एंड योगर्ट। ये लिया बन, स्क्रैम्बल एग, हैश ब्राउन। ये सॉसेज लिया है, बट लुक्स लाइक ये चिकन मटन का नहीं है, किसी और का सॉसेज है, तो शायद आई विल स्किप इट। ये है वेगन सॉसेज। ये आपका जो है टोस्ट है। ये है कुछ सिट आउट एरिया और दिन का। पीछे जो है, इस मैंने कहा कि कैफेटेरिया है और बार काउंटर्स हैं। आ गए हमारे दोस्त मनोज जी, इन्हीं के साथ हम आज बाल्मोरल कैसल जाएंगे। ये कुछ कैसल टाइप चैपल। ये हैं हमारे दोस्त मनोज पाठक। पीछे भाई प्रदीप्ता बैठे हुए। कुछ गलियाँ, ब्यूटीफुल कंट्री साइड। बेहतरीन लैंडस्केप। बेहतरीन शहर, छोटा सा। ढल जाए बाल्मोरल कैसल और डिस्टिलरी की ओर बढ़ते हुए, इसके साथ यहाँ पे फाइनल मैच भी देखते हुए। ये भी एक बेहतरीन विलेज, नदी किनारे, एबुइन काउंटी के कैरग्रॉन, CAIRGROM, कैरग्रॉन नेशनल पार्क है ये। बहुत बड़ा चीज है। चलो ये नदी पैरेलल चलती हुई, काफी स्वच्छ नदी। ये वाला जगह थोड़ा
थोड़ा सा
हाँ,
रुक के ना
कौन सी जगह है ये? बालाटर। ओके, बालाटर है ये। हाँ, एक ब्रेक ले लें, चाय ब्रेक। एक चाय ब्रेक। डी साइड दिल्ली, द आउटडोर स्टोर।
केक वगैरह और चीज है, ठीक है।
हाँ हाँ,
और तो कुछ एडिशनल
नहीं कुछ नहीं, कुछ नहीं जरूरत नहीं। चाय कॉफ़ी इज मोर देन इनफ। हाँ, ट्रेन स्टेशन की तरह बैलेटर स्टेशन, कुछ कोचेस की तरह। ये है रॉयल वेटिंग रूम, आगे स्टेशन मास्टर्स ऑफिस, और ये जो है पीछे आपको दिख रहा है बढ़िया रॉयल कोच। स्टेशन की तर्ज पे ये बना हुआ। ये है रॉयल वेटिंग रूम, फिलहाल क्लोज है। बढ़िया। ये कुछ क्रोनोलॉजिकल डेवलपमेंट यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं। क्वीन को, एलिजाबेथ को। ये क्वीन का एक तरीके से समर प्लेस रहा है। और ये जो है इंफॉर्मेशन एंड सोवेनियर शॉप्स। द रॉयल रूट, एबरदीन joins the station to Balata. रॉयल लोचनगर डिस्टिलरी की ओर बढ़ते हुए, पीछे की साइड पे कैसल था जो हम वापस आके देखेंगे। वेलकम टू रॉयल लोचनगर डिस्टिलरी। ये है स्कॉटलैंड में रॉयल लोचनगर डिस्टिलरी। इसका एक टूर लिया जाएगा। ये कुछ इस तरह से बाहरी दृश्य। ये कुछ एंट्रेंस यहाँ का, देखते हैं टिकट एंट्री और बाकी सब, और एक टूर भी लेते हैं इसका। रॉयल लोचनगर डिस्टिलरी एस्टैब्लिश्ड 1945। चलिए अंदर चल के पूछते हैं क्या टिकट है इनका। 1845 में एस्टैब्लिश हुई है। वाओ,
You have a tour today? No. Oh, you'd like a tour, do you?
ये कुछ
One at 1:30.
That's for the 1 hour, right?
It's 1 hour. That's right.
What is it?
The £40 one is 4 whiskies, and you get a glass to take away with you.
Okay. A glass like that.
No, smaller ones.
सो 22 और 22 है। 40 का है। 40 में कुछ ग्लास वास और 2 विस्की के शॉट मिलेंगे।
Something like that.
बाकी यहाँ देख सकते हैं आप।
Both are at 130, is it?
1:30. Blue label.
ब्लू, ओके। So that's the 20% discount price, or you will give 10% more on
You
that
get
one?
10% off that price if you.
So 20 less 180 you're saying, so that is about 70 CL. Okay, that's good. Okay, Diageo is the parent company of Royal Lochnagar.
If you don't want to do a tour, we have.
Royal Lochnagar, very good. Bottle your own named Royal. Wow.
Yeah.
Baki. The commemorate the visit by HR principal.
So, I can get a glass. The original stills that were seized by the British Army in the hills, because everybody used to make their own whiskey.
Ah, okay,
But
okay.
if you didn't have a license, the army would take these away.
Okay. कुछ हिस्ट्री यहाँ की। ये पुराने तरीके से बनाने का, शराब बनाने का तरीका। ये कुछ हिस्ट्री यहाँ की। ये एक कंटेनर 5 लीटर का। John Bat was typical of his time, and then beer, the most expensive whiskey in Scotland. ये एक बार काउंटर है डिस्टिलरी के अंदर। देख सकते हैं कि जॉन बैट डिस लिमिटेड इज़ द पेरेंट कंपनी। बॉलमोरल में है ये। 1:30 बजे का टूर लिया है, जब भी शुरू होने में थोड़ा टाइम है इसलिए यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं। टूर हमारा स्टार्ट होता होगा।
My name's Tom. I'm going to be your guide this afternoon. So I know you gentlemen are from London. Yeah? Originally from London or? No,
from India.
India. Okay. Brilliant. And you're from Greece. Good. So if you don't understand my English, you belong to a group called Diageo. Diageo is actually a mix-up of your language. It's not a real word at all. It's something to do with people of the world. I don't know. There are 30 distilleries owned by Diageo throughout Scotland, but we also have distilleries in India.
Okay.
Every year, while the spirit is in the cask, the barrel, we lose 2% of the atmosphere because the oak breathes it out. Yeah. But what people don't know is what that 2% that goes out into the atmosphere does. If you look at that building, it's nice and clean, the granite. Because there's no spirit in there. Look at this building where we put the spirit into the cask. It goes black.
Yeah.
And anything that stands around long enough will be covered in the black spore that's created. It's a fungal spore. Totally harmless. Doesn't harm anybody. Any questions during the tour? Be happy to answer them if I can do, okay? If I don't know the answers, I'll try and get the answers for you. That was here. The first one was on the opposite side of the river. But every house that was in the hills used to make their own spirit. So when a big company opened up and they had a license to make spirit here, the local people didn't like it. And mysteriously we were burnt down. That was that was in 1800. 1821, we start building a new distillery here and we start producing it. And we have a license and the local people don't like it. And again, we were mysteriously burned down. 1845, we're now home guns, we're doing okay. No one's burning us down anymore. And a gentleman called John Begg, he is the original producer from Royal Lochnagar. He buys the rights to make the spirit here from his uncle. Mr. Begg's a banker and also a grain merchant, so he's got plenty of money and also a business head. Starts producing new Lochnagar, that's us. Then in 1848, Mr. Begg finds out there's a young couple looking for a holiday home here in Scotland. And he finds out that the man in that relationship, he likes anything to do with the Industrial Revolution and mechanics. So we need water. The water we get is from the same mountain that we share our name with, Lochnagar. There are 5 springs which feed down to us, and we take off a quantity, we let the rest go into the River Dee. We need barley and we need yeast, and the yeast is a living culture. It's like yogurt, and if you were to leave it here, it would die and smell, so we don't put any on display. So when the barley is in the field, it's coated with a protein on the outside which makes it hard. It's to protect it from bugs and from foreign enzymes. So we've got to make the barley believe it's spring, because we want to get at the starch that's inside. So, how do we do that? There, that photograph there on the left. That's called a steeping. For 2 days, tons of barley are put into these big receptacles and hot water is added and it's stirred about, so mixing it all up, so it absorbs the moisture, breaking down the protein on the outside. 2 days, from there, 5 days in these drums here. We continue the germination process. They just rotate. You don't take any of the water away, it doesn't boggy areas, where there's lots of water. And it sank to the bottom and eventually became hard like this. But when you first cut it out of the ground, it's still wet. So you lay it on the side and you let the sun dry it naturally. And then you put that on your fire. And it gives off a lovely aroma. And it gives off a smoke. And if you look at that photograph, you can see a white smoke. That white smoke is sent over the top of the damp grain, and in doing so, the grain being damp will absorb the smells. This one was in operation until the early 80s, but the company that made it were so good at making the product, they didn't need any spare parts, it never broke down, very little maintenance. Once every distillery had one, they didn't need to sell any more, so the company went out of business. Then that company, Porteous, they copied this though, and they made the same mistake, so they went out of business. But now there's a third company making them, and they've done the clever thing. They've added something that's going to go wrong. So the grain comes here, it goes into a hopper here, and then it has to go through 2 rollers in there. These 2 rollers are set just slightly apart, so they just break it open. Because what we want to do is we want to inspect that grain to make sure it's the right quality and quantity. Some of the grain will go into a tray like this. They pull the tray out and they take a scoop, and then using a box like this, except there's a stainless steel and it's got 8 layers, the men and one woman that we have here stand and they shake it 40 times to the left and 40 times to the right. Doesn't seem right, does it? I didn't believe it either. I thought, no, you're joking. But no, they do it because I had to go and see it happen. So, what we're after is making sure that what's inside is of good quality and the right consistency. So we're after 20% of grits, 70% of husk, and 10% of flour. That flour is the starch that's inside the grain of all the parts. Grist is what we're going to use for the next part of the process called a mash. And we have 4 mashes a week. 1 on Monday, 1 on a Wednesday, and 2 on a Thursday. And then on Friday, we just open up the hatches and let everything breathe and clean out the bottom of everything. Yeah? Mash done. If you go to a more modern distillery, theirs are closed because they are more efficient. But this is the old-fashioned way, and we do everything the old-fashioned way. We have all our grist. 5.4 tonnes of that grist was deposited into this tun. The bottom of that tun is false. There are plates like a jigsaw that you can remove. And each of the plates has thousands of little holes in to allow the liquid to seep through. We put the grist in and then we add 4 waters. As I said, 5,000 litres each water, and they can start off at 63 degrees. They start to mix up with the grist and the waters seep through the base and come out. The first 2 that come out have the most sugar in them. They're the ones we want, and they come out as hot wort. Hot wort we use in the next part of the process. Okay. The last 2 waters that come out, although they contain sugar, they are not good enough for the next part of the process. Okay. So they come out as sparge. Okay. And sparge is a Latin word meaning sprinkle. Sparge goes into this big tank here, and we keep it hot, and that will be number 1 and 2 of the next mash. At the end of 8 hours, while this big rake has been going around, turning it around, at the end of the 8 hours, what's left is now called draff. It's no longer grist, it's draff. And draff is that brown deposit that you can see in those holes down there. The draff gets pushed out through pipes to a waiting trailer, and that trailer takes it away the farmer takes it away to his farm, and he feeds it to his cattle. So they get a sweet, protein-filled breakfast. Our hot worts, we now want to move on and do something else with it, and we do it there. The yeast that we use is a living culture. So if we were to use the water as it comes out of there, at the temperature it comes out, it would kill the yeast straight away. So we'd have to start again. So we have to reduce the temperature down to 16 to 18 degrees. And we do that here. The hot water travels through here, cold water through there, and then there's a heat exchange. The cold water now becomes hot and goes into this tank, and that becomes number 3 and number 4 of the next mash. So we're reusing the waters. The hot water now, or hot water should I say, is now down to 16 to 18, and through this pipe here, we start mixing the yeast. Because it's a liquid form, you start mixing the yeast with the hot water and we start to brew. And what we're making now is making beer. Because to make whiskey, you've got to make beer first.
Okay.
So we'll go and see where we start to make our beer.
Okay. Fermentation. Okay.
As of all the languages on the board, the one language don't have, I think we should, is Greek. Because no one speaks Greek other than the Greeks. Sorry.
And the Cypriot.
Cypriot, that's true, yes. So, these are called washbacks. They are made of Oregon pine from the United States. The wood does nothing to help the mix really, it just holds in the liquid. Okay? So in there goes our hot wort and our yeast. After 48 hours, the hot wort the sugars in the hot wort is being eaten away by the yeast. And at 48 hours, the yeast starts to die. And we have an alcohol level of between 8 and 9%. It will never go any higher than that. It will always be 8 or 9% whilst it's in there. From there, what's happening is a natural fermentation, so it gets hot. And as well as doing that, it produces sulphurs and also something called esters. And esters is a substance that's in there that when you drink whiskey, you think, I can taste apples, or I can taste pears or plums. You're not, but your mind thinks you are because of ester, because the esters that's in there, this substance. It never disappears, that's why you get these flavours. So, 48 hours, we could use it, but we don't use it, nor do the majority of distillers. The majority of distillers use it at 70 hours because they want to get things quicker. We leave ours for 110. There's one other distillery that leaves it for 140, but ours is 110. We think that's the optimum time. The reason being it gets fruitier and we leave it for longer.
Okay.
The wood, as I say, comes from the United States. Each piece of wood, you're only seeing 1/3 of each washback. The other 2/3 are little blue motors on the top, and those blue motors control an arm inside which stirs it up like you would a pan of milk so you don't let it go overflowing. Once we've had it in there for 140 hours, we now have to get rid of some parts that we don't want.
Also contribute to this.
The wood doesn't contribute to anything, just holds it in there. Okay, so we'll go through to the
Next distillation process. Okay. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, it has a smell of. Smell of beer, whiskey. Huh?
is held here until it goes through this first still. This is our wash still.
Wash still, okay.
It can hold 7,400 litres, but we never put 7,400 litres in. We only put 6,000 in because the shape of the still and the amount of liquid that you put into it at the beginning all contributes to the final characteristic of the whiskey. It's a big coiled pipe, and it's indirectly heated by steam, and we get our power from the north outside into what's known as a worm tub. That's a condenser. It turns the vapour back into a liquid form. Whilst this is happening inside here, the copper, which is the best substance for making gin, vodka or whiskey, is having a conversation, what's called a reflux, with the spirit. And it's taking away things that we don't want. And those things will stick on the side. And the vapours that don't make it over the top, they wash it down to the lands in the bottom here, and that's called pot ale. And we'll use pot ale later for something else. Whilst it's going through, we use a copper plate to go through our range. The reason being we want to continue the reflux, the conversation between the copper and the alcohol. And we also use a warm water worm tub. The reason we want warm water is to slow down the change from a vapour to alcohol, liquid, because we want it to take these things away. And then they come back up with another part and go into the low wines and faints charger. You'll see it's much smaller because we reduce the amount of liquid that's going through. The low wines and faints go into the low wine still here. And exactly the same process, 60 to 70 degrees, the first phase.
No, that's fine.
All there. We have no computers. Now I'll describe what happens here. So the low wines run through this globe, and they'll run through this globe for about 2 hours, and they go into a big cask underneath here. Once they get mixed with the other part, the faints, they start running through this one. And this one, we start referring to the head, the heart, and the tail. The head is an alcohol level of 80%, dropping down to 75. Once it reaches 75, after approximately 20 minutes, the guys cut the head off. And they send the heart into there. So the head has run into this cask as well. So you've got this one and this one run together. The heart runs into that cask there. It runs for approximately 2 hours, 2.5 hours. During that time, you get an alcohol level starting at 75, but it drops to 63. And at 63, we don't want to go any further with it into that cask. So we cut the heart out and we send the tail into there. So now you have the head and the heart, the head and the tail in there. Also the low wines are in there. They get mixed together and they go through the second still all over again. The heart is in there, and we want to now standardise the volume, the alcohol volume, to 63.5. And we do that by adding some water from that tank. Because you've got 75 down to 63, we want to bring it together to 60 casks. Okay, and it's very important, especially if you're speaking to a Scotsman. I'm not Scots, I'm Welsh. If you speak to a Scotsman and you say, I want to look at your barrels, so we don't use them.
So how do you maintain quality control if you are not computers or measuring it?
Pardon?
How do you maintain quality control? Output kind of.
To make sure that we've got the right temperatures and we have a hydrometer and a thermometer. The hydrometer measures the level of alcohol. The temperature gauged by the thermometer. If the liquid is too hot, then we have to deduct some. If the liquid's not hot enough, we have to add some, and that's all done on these. All calculations done by the operators here.
Frog is, yeah, live frog.
Scottish frogs are more aggressive than English ones.
Oh, is it? Must be joking, man.
So, this is where we fill our casks.
Yeah.
All of the heart comes across into this big tank here. And again, the wood that tank's made of doesn't add or take away anything. It just holds it there for us. And then using these very industrial pipes, we fill each cask. But before we can fill each cask, and they're Spanish Oloroso sherry casks, before we can fill them, we have to know how much they weigh. Because just like you and me, we're all different. And each cask, although it looks the same, isn't. It's slightly different. So we need to know how much it is empty. So first of all, we weigh it on those very high-tech scales behind you.
Yeah, okay.
Once we know how much it weighs, it's rolled back into here. It's given a barcode and also a chalk code, so we know it's from one batch. You're then lined up, and then using this pipe, we fill it up. And having filled it up, we have to seal it. And we use a cloth called Hessian. Put the Hessian over the top, and then using a bung called a poplar wood bung. Poplar wood is super absorbent, will close off the hole quickly. Put that in there, and then using this hammer, we give it a warehousing facility as well as being another distillery. And for our whiskey, it goes to sleep for 12 years.
Oh, okay.
That's the maturation process. Do you know how long it has to be in a cask before? 3 years.
3
Anything
years.
under 3 years, not worth having.
Scotch whisks, okay.
And do you know how much alcohol level it's got to be before it can be called Scotch whisky?
43.
40%. 40% alcohol. It can be higher than that, but anything below that, just use it to make you clean your car engine. It's not worth having. So it goes in here, goes off to Glenlossie. Glenlossie there, it's stored for 12 years. Then it's transported to a place called Leven. And at Leven, it's put into a huge vat where it's all mixed together as a batch, and they're bottled. And we pay the VAT on the bottling in Leven. The cask you see there has whiskey in it, and that whiskey originally belonged to the Queen.
Oh,
But of course, when the Queen died, it then transferred to her son, the King. So that's his bottle, and that's called a Royal Warrant, that sign there. We have a new Royal Warrant because that one was given to us in 2021. Normally they last for 5 years or until the death of the monarch. So with the Queen dying within that period, the King has given us a new warrant because we supply alcohol to Balmoral.
okay.
They take it from us. It's slightly different in that it's been aged longer, 16 years, and it's got a higher alcohol content than our normal one, which is 48%. Guys here didn't get paid very much. They would do all this by hand. They would have a big funnel, which they put in there. The step, because this was lower, and a big jug, and they'd be pouring it into the... And the manager would watch from there to make sure no one stole anything. But everybody, especially us Brits and people from the subcontinent, we like a cup of tea. We like a cup of tea. So, when the manager went off for a cup of tea or went to visit the toilet, they'd watch and he's gone. And they'd take that out. And then from their trousers, they'd pull a tube called a copper dog, because it was made of copper. And there would be a bit of string on the end, they'd dip it inside, pull it out, put a cork in the top, and put it back down their trousers. So the manager never knew, even though they were walking like this for the rest of the day. What's known as the malt whisky tour. And it's a sign, a pagoda, but its real name is a Doig chimney. In 1888, a man called Charles Doig, he was a designer of distilleries. And because there'd been some explosions at distilleries because of the compacted dust in the kiln, Mr. Doig was asked to develop something to stop those explosions. So he developed this special chimney, and the chimney draws the air from all around. And instead of taking it straight down onto the heated grain, it takes it down the sides, so it comes up through the bottom. And that's how it dries it. So it pushes all the little grainy bits that could cause an explosion out through the top, reducing that possibility. You'd see steam coming out the top because it's open topped. And this is where the pipes that run the low wines and the mix go through. And they're heating up the water, but also in there there's a warm water anyway, so you see a lot of steam coming out over the top. Yeah.
When you pointed out head, tail and heart,
Yes.
those words, is it different level of the
Alcohol?
alcohol?
Yes. The head, that's 80%.
Okay.
When it gets to 75%, we start to reach the heart, so we cut the head off. And that sends it into another cask. The heart then runs into that wooden cask, and it's kept there. But once that drops below 63%, we cut out the heart and we send the tail to mix with the head and the low wines. And that goes through the system all over again.
Okay. But in the other container, it always have the same alcohol level, right?
We mix water with it to make sure that they'll get 63.5%. And this is the trailer that'll take away the draft that was produced during the match. Yes, there's a small warehouse here, which holds casks from some distilleries that no longer exist.
Oh, okay.
And also other distilleries from our group. And two very special casks as well, which we'll see. And the reason we've got them here is because we used to be a training environment. We used to teach people how to taste, first of all, make whiskey, and then how to taste it and smell it so they could go back to their countries and sell it on our behalf. So, this is our little special library of whiskies. When we produce the spirit, that's what it looks like. Before it has any time in the cask, that's what it looks like. So hold your hand out. And you rub it like a perfume as well, warm it up, it gives off different aromas. That's 57% alcohol. Now, these are casks. We've got sherry casks and we've got American hoghead casks. It's in here that whiskey's produced. Whilst it's there, that's spirit. Comes out of here, it's whiskey. Stays in there for at least 3 years, normally a lot longer. We don't do anything less than 8 years. But the majority of ours now, all ours are now at the moment at 12 years. Whilst it's in there, 3 things are happening. We have an addition, an extraction, and a mix. The addition is where the spirit goes in and it takes things from the wood. It takes the flavours from the sherry and the other whiskies that have been in there. The extraction is the things we couldn't get rid of in the distillery, the wood takes them away. And the mix is when everything starts to mix. The spirit mixes with the things that the wood's just given. Now we use oak, because oak's the best wood for storing these things. This is an American oak stave, but all these staves will look the same when they've been first produced. They will look black like that. because they've been burnt on the inside. And what you're doing is you're opening up the wood so that it'll allow the transfer of the liquid and the flavours to happen. As the years go by, yeah, and it's too light and it gets a bit foggy. But every time we put her in here, we have to have it inspected every so often. So at the 12 years of age point, our master blender, she will uncork one of these and she will take a sample out and she will say, yep, that's ready, that can go for bottling. If she says no, it either goes to sleep or it gets destroyed because it hasn't reached. It's maybe gone sour for some reason. It's very rare that ever happens, but it might happen. So she would check it. Once it's reached that sweet point, yeah, we want that. So you send the whole batch away. It's because of the white oak. Now,
you said it is down to the esters that the notes come in, right?
Sorry, I think.
You said earlier that it is down to the esters that contributes to this.
Yeah, that's right. But you also get the flavours from these as well.
From the wood.
Yeah. So, but particular flavours your mind will pick up on tend to come from the esters. So, because we all have slightly different ways of tasting.
But the master blender would be able to differentiate between.
You will get different flavours from these, yes. Now they're puncheons or butts, depending on the size of them and the shape of them. And these are called hogheads. And anyone know why they're called hogheads? No? So, in the old days, when the sailing ships used to travel between Europe and America, there were normally 3 classes of passenger. The first class, the second class, and the third class. Third class lived in the bottom of the boat, didn't get to see the sunlight very often, and ate rubbish. Well, the rubbish they were eating was the hog heads, the pig's heads, that were put inside these casks. And because of the size of them, they were able to hold between at least 3 and 4 pig's heads. And they would be taken out during the journey, boiled up and served to the passengers. Not very nice. Not my idea of food, anyway. These casks come from America, and they're IKEA packed when they come to us. It means they'd be dismantled completely. So we reassemble them, but we don't reassemble all of them because the American cask back in the United States only holds 200 litres. We want them to hold 250 litres. So as a result, we keep some aside and we increase the volume of the ones we're going to use, increase the liquid volume to 250 litres. We don't use British oak. We don't use British oak because of our atmosphere, our oak trees don't grow as quickly. Because they don't grow as quickly, they develop branches much earlier. And if you have a branch in the wood, you get a knot in the wood. If you have a knot in the wood, the oak's going to leak. So we don't use British oak. Except for them 2 casks there. There's a very special cask. These are the exception to the rule. Back in 1953, the king had died. Young Elizabeth was coming to the throne of Britain at the age of 24. Johnnie Walker were very astute. They knew that a young girl like that was going to live till she was quite old. So they decided to make a special blend using whisky from our distillery and other distilleries to make these for the Diamond Jubilee when she'd been on the throne for 60 years. At that 60-year point, they were put into these bottles. They were made by a French company called Baccarat. They're lead crystal. They sat on 6 lead crystal legs. They had a solid silver neck and a half-carat diamond in each. 59 of them went off to auction, and in auction they made £100,000 each at least. That money was given to the Queen, who then gave it to charity. The 60th bottle was handed over to a Queen by Johnnie Walker. There you go, Your Majesty, look after that, enjoy it. And somebody did enjoy it, Prince Philip. Prince Philip, when he was alive, liked this particular dram. And unless you were a special friend or a special guest, you didn't get to sample it because he enjoyed it that much. Bundringham in Norfolk, in England, we had to have special, Johnnie Walker had to have special permission to cut the trees down. And that's why they're so small. Okay, so now we will go and actually sample.
कुछ विस्की यहाँ टेस्ट की जा सकती हैं, ऑलरेडी लगा रखी हैं. Royal Lochnagar. How was the trip, MP? How was the trip?
Trip was very good.
Good one.
Good one. Informative. But it's not working, right? It's just prototype, I believe, ना?
No, no, it's working.
That's
Okay.
working, ना, बोला ना.
काम कर रहा है? Okay, good. तो ये था रॉयल लोचनगर का डिस्टिलरी का टूर. उम्मीद है आपको ये टूर पसंद आया होगा. पसंद आया तो लाइक, शेयर और सब्सक्राइब करें चैनल को. थैंक यू.